The national debt just hit $38 trillion. Congratulations, America. Congress spent every penny. 38 large comes to $287,000 for every household in America, with another $140,000 in private debt. And it comes just 2 months after we crossed $37 trillion back on August 12th. As in, we're now running an annualized $5.1 trillion of additional debt, which is 2.5 times the headline deficit. It also comes to $40,000 in new debt for every household in America last year. In other words, you could have bought a nice car last year with cash. Instead, Congress blew it. For perspective, $38 trillion is roughly 1/3 of all the M2 money in the whole world. So this amount of debt is doing three things. First, it is escalating debt interest payments, which go on top of existing debt. Yes, we borrow every penny. Second, it's raising interest rates as federal borrowing crowds out everything else: business loans, personal loans, mortgages. Third, it's raising concerns among investors, people who buy all that debt, whether government will actually pay it back. So the Congressional Budget Office now projects $140 trillion of debt by 2054, which is literally more than all the money in the world. So will they pay it back? Now, about 81% of voters say they care about federal debt in polls, but it ranks very low, typically around number 10 or 12, down with transgenders in sports. Presumably because in the back of their minds, voters know it will never be paid back. It is just numbers. But it's not just numbers to the investors who buy these bonds, including every major bank and pension fund. They're already driving up interest rates, bond yields, in fear of default. It's driving the so-called debasement trade, gold and silver, as investors worry that they'll let inflation run to reduce the debt, which increases the value of gold and silver. This actually happened under Biden, where he added $8 trillion in debt, but the debt to GDP ratio actually went down because of inflation. In the extreme case, Weimar Germany used inflation to shrink their crippling national debt to the price of a loaf of bread. Alas, Biden crashed out before we got the loaf of bread. Even worse is a hard default, where they simply stop paying. This happens in states all the time. In 2008, California, Arizona, and Illinois paid in IOUs. New York famously did it in the 70s. It also happens in countries all the time, usually basket cases like Venezuela or Sri Lanka, but also in rich countries when some clever politician realizes that voters enjoy stiffing Wall Street and China, who own the debt. It's exactly what happened in Greece in 2012, where the prime minister decided to stiff the greedy German bankers who owned Greece's foreign debt. This set off a default crisis across Europe, ultimately bailed out with 30% of the GDP involved. So in U.S. terms, that's about a $6 trillion bailout. So what's next? Brought to you by I Trust Capital. $140 trillion by 2054 is a comic book number, but CBO says it's coming, and it will almost certainly be defaulted, whether hard or soft with inflation. The easy fixes are cut spending or balanced budget amendment, which will not happen, meaning either we fix the money and the Fed with gold, or it is a combination of periodic default and permanent inflation that will really make that gold, silver, or Bitcoin shine. Read the rest with charts and all the gory details at profitandknowledge.com. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.